Good morning. Nice to be back into this parish again, and sunny weather and the unpredictability of liturgy. Father Gayton has returned, as you can see. A week ago I was with other major superiors, Jesuit superiors for Asia Pacific, on the island of Jeju. Anyone been to the island of Jeju in South Korea? So the island of Jeju lies south of Korea and sits between China and Japan. It's a population of about 500,000 people. And every 6 months the major superiors of Asia Pacific gather together to talk about our needs in our conference. And this time was a bit special because I've never been to Jeju Island before, as I can see most of you have not. But it has a history of violence. So about shortly after I was born, so in 1948, there was a bit of insurrection in Jeju Island, and about 30,000 people were killed. But the truth of that massacre wasn't heard until 2009, when the president apologised to the other people of Korea. At the same time, now they're building a naval base on the island of Jeju, and the bishop there invited the Jesuits to come and support a St. Francis Place Centre for Peace, because the people of Jeju Island and this community were opposing the building of this naval base on Jeju Island. And every day the Jesuits there, the Korean Jesuits, say Mass across the road from the naval base, and they call it the Eucharist as protest. The Eucharist as protest, protesting for peace in our world. And the bishop hopes that with the people of Jeju Island and the Jesuits with them, that island will become an island of peace for our world. Pope Francis, as he was heading to Poland for World Youth Day a few days ago, said, "The world is at war because it has lost peace. We have lost peace." And of course, as soon as he got to Poland, what did he do? He spent a day walking through Auschwitz silently, quietly, praying for the grace of tears for what has been done in that place. And we might think in our world today that it's a long way, 100 years ago when the Irish Jesuits came, that our world has perhaps got better or worse, as it may be, in terms of violence. But the two Irish Jesuits who came here 100 years ago came in the context of violence at that time. Now, Father Richard Murphy and Father Robert Little were the first two Jesuits to come to the parish of Toowong. Both of them had some formation and training in Australia. They went back to do theology and be ordained in Ireland, and then they came back to this mission in 1916. It is helpful to remember that they came at a time just after the Dublin uprising of April of that year, where many hundreds of Irish people died. And that would have been strong in the minds not only of the Irish Jesuits, but many Australians at that time, of the great protest for independence in Dublin. But in July that same year of 2016, thousands of Australians were dying on the battlefields of France. And in one night in July of that year, 5,000 Australians either died or were injured on the battlefields of France. So even 100 years ago, the world was at war with itself, with others, and it continues to be at war. And violence, of course, sits at our very doorstep, even in this country. The way we treat asylum seekers and refugees is a form of violence. And we saw on the ABC the other night the treatment of youth in the Dondale Centre up in Darwin. Again, violence sits at our door. We are people of violence. And yet, the Eucharist, every time we gather, as we do here this morning, we are protesting with the Lord for peace. We are protesting for a better world together, young and old, that we may live the gospel of peace. Ignatius, of course, was converted. He was converted as a soldier. He was converted after the Battle of Pamplona when he was injured, but his life was on a trajectory of further violence, further war, further enticement into the courts of the people of Spain at that time, and he was converted. A bit like Jeremiah in the reading this morning, "O Lord, you have enticed me and I was enticed. You have overpowered me and you have prevailed." Ignatius experienced being overpowered by the mercy and the forgiveness and the love of God. Something we all seek in our lives, to know that deep mercy that Pope Francis talks about, to know that whatever we are, wherever we've been, whatever has happened to us, God's mercy reaches out to us and can overpower us and change our lives. But of course, Ignatius didn't stay just with being enticed and overpowered. He sought to live out that mission and to carry the cross with Jesus for a better world. And you might remember that one time he was travelling to Rome as a pilgrim, and he stopped at a little chapel on the wayside called La Storta. And it was there that he had a vision. And in that vision, God the Father really gave him the grace to be placed with Jesus, carrying his cross. And you might remember in the Gospel this morning where Jesus says, "Whoever does not carry the cross and follow me cannot be my disciple." What Ignatius received at La Storta, what we Jesuits receive, and what you receive in following the tradition of Ignatius, is the grace to walk with Jesus as his friend, as his companion, but also in the Lord as servant of peace for the world. We carry the cross together with Jesus for a better world and for peace. And you might remember today, on this Feast of Ignatius, that Jesuits are not called Ignatians. The Dominicans are called after St. Dominic, the Franciscans after St. Francis, the Benedictines after St. Benedict. But we Jesuits are not called after Ignatius, we're called after Jesus. For Ignatius, it was so important, that friendship and companionship with Jesus carrying his cross, that he wanted us to be known as a company, as friends with Jesus. And he offers that to you as well, that we are friends with Jesus, carrying the cross for a world that seeks to be merciful, a world that seeks to be at peace. So may this feast day today of Ignatius, born 525 years ago, still calling us to follow the name of Jesus, the person of Jesus, to be the companion of Jesus, but for each of us to be missionaries and mercies of mercy and of peace.